Hi everyone, welcome to Module 5 of Nursing 720. We're just going to go over a few things with Module 5. So we'll go ahead and click onto that module. We're going to really go over today, or actually the next 2 weeks, about qualitative research. And this is a really strong component of research. It doesn't really focus so much on the numbers. It is more like the quality. I guess that's why they call it qualitative research. So a lot of times people will do a qualitative research project when they want to know more of the intricacies of what they're asking. So it's not just a numbers game of, how many people feel this way and how many people responded this way. It's really about capturing that essence as to why they responded the way they did. And then, so with Module 5, Chapter 7 is designing a clinically based qualitative capstone research project. And then Chapter 8 is designing a clinically based mixed methods capstone research project. So depending upon what your area of interest is, what your project really is about, and what you're trying to capture, depends upon what approach you're going to be using, whether it's qualitative or quantitative. And I will tell you, sometimes that changes. My research, originally, I wanted to do a qualitative study, and my chair said, you know what, I think that you're going to get just as much data quantitatively, and I think you need, instead of just doing a sampling where I have a snowball or a convenience sample, I actually had a national study. So every person who was a health educator, who is either an MCHES or a CHES certified health educator, got my survey. So it can be very, very, very expensive. Still paying that one off, actually. So it just really kind of depends upon your area of research. Now, by no means will you have to do a national study for your DNP. I just kind of threw that out there, that my purpose for telling you this is that sometimes when you have this discussion with your chair, he or she might decide perhaps the other approach might be better for what you're trying to obtain. So anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there. Okay, so when we go into the content folder, you'll see the video that Chris had produced, as well as the video that Heather had produced. So please take time to review those. Both of you guys did an outstanding job. And then if you scroll down towards the bottom, there's just a little PDF file for you to review. The HEVI chapters 5 and 7 really focus on sampling methods, sample size, effect size, and power. So this really kind of comes into play into that quantitative aspect. I mean, obviously sampling size, sampling methods, those do string along with the qualitative approach as well. But when we really start talking about power and that sort of thing, you see that more in quantitative studies. You might see it in qualitative studies too, but really with quant studies, you'll see that more. So anyway, review the PowerPoints here and then the videos that come along with that. And then if you go into the discussion forum, oh, and there's a little video about here about sampling as well, sampling methods. If you go into the forum for the discussion board, there's a short video. It's about 3 minutes. Gives you some pointers about gaining your resources for your literature review. So it's really important that as you are collecting your resources, don't sit down and think that you're going to read from very beginning to very end every one of those resources that you pulled. You're going to just read the bits and pieces of it in order for you to know whether or not that piece of literature is going to be instrumental in your project. So again, looking at those abstracts is very helpful. I always give people the idea to go into a reference that you found to be very, very helpful and aligns almost seamlessly with your project, look at the resources they have used. If they're timely and most of the time they're going to be relevant to what you're doing, if that project aligns, if the project that you have just read from that literature review aligns with what you're doing. So in other words, it basically takes some of that legwork off of you for trying to find resources that are applicable to your particular study. So that's just one piece of advice. So, and then like I said, the woman who does this PowerPoint does a really good job giving you pointers as far as what to do and what not to do when conducting your lit review. So on that note, what's coming up for your assignment for this module, we'll go ahead back in there, is you're looking at the description of technical equipment, instruments, and key personnel. And in the meantime, I will try to dig up more information about this, but this is one of those areas that may or may not, and when I say dig up more information, I'm going through the feedback from the SurveyMonkey, so I know that there are things that I need to give you in addition to what is already built into the course to help you grow and to help strengthen your knowledge in this subject area. Basically, when it comes to the description of the technical equipment, for example, does your project that you're going to be implementing require any kind of technical equipment? Okay. In addition, if you're doing a qualitative study, for example, are you going to be analyzing the data using SPSS? Okay, so that is kind of technical equipment. You'll be doing a data analysis using SPSS. Now that really comes in line if you're doing a comparative study. So and this really, when we start talking about different, well, and you probably have already read about it and learned about it, but when we talk about like ANOVAs, for example, when you have big data sets and you're trying to extrapolate a comparison between two variables. So that would require a lot of times inferential statistics, such as an ANOVA. So to do an ANOVA, then you would want to use the SPSS program by typing in basically your values of those variables and then keying in what you want to compare, and the system does that for you and it generates your statistics. So that's just one example. Most DNP projects do not use that, okay? So don't be overwhelmed with that. Instruments. So the instrument that you will be using to survey your sample. So for example, if you wanted to, I'll just throw it out there, if you wanted to know nurses' attitudes towards providing end-of-life care, you would use Catherine Frauenhelt's FATCOD scale. Okay, so that's an inventory scale that goes through several questions to the nurses about their comfort level, about their understanding and compassion towards providing end-of-life care. Okay, so that's what we mean by an instrument. Really look at the instruments that are out there. The DNP projects are now available in a PDF form. I've talked to the librarian to see if we could get that embedded. So I will post that into the announcements as well. So you can access the previous year's DNP projects. All right, so if you are doing something that's similar to what a student did last year, take a look at their project and see if that instrument would work for your project. If you don't see anything out there in other DNP studies, you might have to go a little bit further and your research component might need to expand a little bit. And also, I would really recommend talking to the librarians, Paula Martin or Paul Worrell, our two librarians at Holman. They are fantastic. They usually work Monday through Friday, but you can send them an email. Say, I'm trying to find this instrument, you know, that relates to this. Is there somewhere in a library search, where can I be searching for the instruments? And they should be able to help you find a specific search engine that is for research instruments. Okay, so essentially when it comes to instrumentation, you don't want to develop your own, and the reason for that is because first you have to pilot test it. You have to create an instrument that really speaks to specific constructs of what you're measuring, and that in and of itself is a dissertation. Okay, so you don't want to be doing that at this point. You want to find something that's already been used, it's already been tested. Validity and reliability have been researched on it. It's been reported. You can use that validity, reliability in your own report of the efficacy of the instrument. And, you know, we want to basically make this as painless as possible for you. So find that instrument that's already existing. They are out there. It's just a matter of knowing where to go and looking for them. Key personnel. So these are people, say for example, you are going to be administering a survey face-to-face, but you don't want anyone knowing that you're the one who, you know, is delivering the survey. Obviously, when we start talking about confidentiality and we talk about consent forms, your name's going to be all over that. But let's just say you want to collect some qualitative data, okay? But you don't want to be the person who is sitting within that group of nurses or whoever it is that you are interviewing for whatever reason. So you might have to have someone, you might have to outsource that to someone else, and that might be that key personnel. That's going to be someone who understands the research that you are trying to obtain. They are knowledgeable and have the skills to ask those qualitative questions. I mean, obviously you will have a set of questions that you start out with, but sometimes with certain things like grounded theory, you need to develop more questions based on the questions that have previously been asked. So that key personnel might be that liaison that you have asked to be the facilitator of that focus group, for example. So that way then the people within the focus group don't feel intimidated if you're the one who's doing the interviewing. Now this really kind of comes into play if you are overseeing a group of nurses and you basically are their boss or their manager. Okay, that's where you might need to have someone like that. So anyway, that's an example of key personnel. There could be other examples of key personnel that are instrumental in your project. These could be nurse educators. So if you are developing a curriculum for new nurses, your key personnel are going to be your other nurse educators within a facility who's going to be delivering that curriculum. Okay, so I hope that makes sense as far as what's required and that. And again, just a reminder, this is just a building block. This is not your end all be all project. Okay, this is just getting your feet wet and putting something on paper. Okay, and then we can fine tune it as your journey throughout the DNP program goes on. All right, so I will, in the announcements, I'm going to upload that link to get you to our previous DNP graduates projects. And if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to contact me either by phone, email. We can have a conversation over Zoom, however you need to talk. I'm always here to help you. So I'll talk to you soon. Thanks.